My name is Hassan Shibli. I'm the Executive Director of CARE Florida and an attorney representing the Todashev family. I want to welcome you all today for this very important conference. We have joining us today Ms. Victoria Johnson, who is a law student and an interpreter for the victim's father, Mr. Ibragim Todashev. Then we have attorney Eric Luden with the law firm of Tucker & Luden, which is one of the firms that is joining us as co-counsel on this case. We have Yvette Acosta Macmillan from the ACLU. We're very thankful to have her support today. And Ahmed Yakzan from the from the law firm of Tucker & Luden.
Can you spell those names?
Yes, let me spell those names. Victoria is Viktoria. Johnson, Johnsson. Myself, Hassan, Hassan. Last name Shibli, Shibly. Mr. Eric Luden, ERIC LUDIN. Yvette is spelled, Yvette, I'm sorry, is YVETTE. Acosta, ACOSTA. Macmillan, MAC, capital MILLAN. Ahmed Yakzan, AHMAD. Yakzan, YAKZAN. And Mr. Ibragim Todashev, ABDULBAKI. Todashev, TODASHEV. So CARE Florida is a premier civil rights organization for all people. In our office alone, we have over four full-time attorneys working to defend victims of discrimination and government harassment, regardless of their faith, their race, or their religion. And the reason we are involved in this case, because of the very strong civil rights implications it potentially has. We're gathered here today for this press conference for three purposes. One is to introduce our client, and so you can hear from him about the wonderful son that he has lost and the suffering he has gone through as a result. And you will also hear about his dedication to seek justice for his son, who was shot 7 times while he was unarmed and suffering from a knee injury as he was being interrogated by FBI agents in his own home after 4 hours of interrogation. We are also here to welcome and thank the Department of Justice and the State Attorney, Mr. Jeff Ashton's criminal investigation into the shooting of Ibragim Todashev, and to really express our full confidence that we have that they will do a thorough and a fair job and ensure that if there is any abuse, it will not be tolerated, and that any wrongdoing on behalf of the officers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We would also like to announce that 2 high-profile attorneys, or 2 high-profile law firms have joined this case, and we believe that the involvement of these attorneys will show the seriousness of this case to the public and to the federal officials. As I said, we would like to thank the Department of Justice and the Orange County Sheriff's Attorney, Mr. Jeff Ashton, for conducting their own independent criminal investigation into why an unarmed Florida resident was shot to death 7 times at least by federal agents after hours of interrogation in his own home. We find comfort knowing how serious Mr. Ashton's office is taking this matter. Our primary concern is to ensure the integrity of this investigation and that justice prevails. Let me be clear, this is not just about the Muslim community, but about the civil rights of all Americans. We have a very strong and a diverse legal team of Jewish, Muslim, Christian, even Buddhist attorneys working together to ensure that justice prevails in this case. What makes America so great is that no legal authority is above the law. My own cousin was shot and killed in Syria a few months ago, and if I were to go to that country and ask why my cousin was killed, I myself would be persecuted. That's the greatness of this country, is that when an unarmed citizen is taken by his own government and killed by federal officers, we have the right, in fact the duty, to question the government why it happened and make sure that any wrongdoing is brought to justice. This case is about police accountability and justice. We cannot tolerate a system without police accountability. I don't think people want to live in a country where they fear that they may get killed by federal agents in their own home. We are seeking a fair and thorough investigation. The bottom line, and I think something that we can all agree on, is that Mr. Todashev, Ibragim Todashev, should never have been killed, and we need to understand why that happened and what could be done to ensure this never happens again, and also to bring justice to his family. So, in the next part, we would like to introduce that attorney Barry Cohen is joining this case as lead counsel. He will be joining our legal team as lead counsel, along with the law firm of Tucker and Luden. Attorney Barry Cohen, who is recognized as one of the top attorneys in the States, is the attorney whom judges and lawyers go to when they need legal help, and we're very honored to have him join our legal team as co-counsel. We believe this will show the seriousness of this case to the federal agents and the public. Also, we are very thankful to have the American Civil Liberties Union. We're very thankful to have the ACLU support with us today. And I want to introduce Yvette Acosta-Macmillan to say a few words about their involvement in this case. And we really want to thank them for their support and ensuring that the civil rights of all people are protected.
The journalist on the conference call who is typing, please mute your telephone.
Good morning, everybody. As Hassan said, I'm Yvette Acosta-Macmillan with the ACLU. And the ACLU has been very involved in this case, even though it's kind of been on the margins. But as you may all be aware, we requested independent investigations both in Massachusetts and in Florida. In Florida, we requested that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement conduct an independent investigation of what happened when Ibragim Todashev was shot. Unfortunately, we have received responses saying that they are deferring to the FBI, which was one of the arguments that we've put in for an independent investigation, was that the FBI should not be investigating itself. There was a New York Times report after much research that indicated that the last 150 shootings involving FBI agents, after the FBI conducted investigations, they were all determined to be justified. So, needless to say, we would like somebody else to have, or would have liked somebody else to conduct that investigation. Therefore, we're very supportive of the Orange County State Attorney's Office for their proposed investigation. After we requested the investigations, we have proceeded to submit public records requests to both the Orange County Police Department and the Orange County, not the Orange County Police Department, I'm sorry, the Orlando Police Department and the Orange County Medical Examiner. From the police department, we requested all documents that were prepared prior to and after the shooting, and from the medical examiner we requested the autopsy report and all video recordings and photographs. The police department has not responded yet, but the medical examiner did respond with what we expected, saying that the FBI had indicated that there is an ongoing investigation and that therefore these records are exempt from the Florida Public Records Law. Yesterday we submitted to the medical examiner a request for clarification, which we can do pursuant to Florida's Public Records Law, asking her to clearly specify exactly why these particular records are exempt, if there is a criminal investigation by the FBI, and further details in order to justify the exemption. We'll see what they answer and we'll proceed with that, whatever we need to do after that. Finally, the ACLU would like to credit Mr. Todashev for not giving up, for being the parent that he is, fighting for answers in the death of his father, and of his son rather, and we will continue to support in whatever we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvette. We are really glad to have your support and thankful for that. I would now like to introduce Mr. Eric Luden from the law firm of Tuck & Luden, talk about their involvement in the case, as well as about our co-counsel, Mr. Barry Cohen. Eric?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sibley. My name's Eric Luden. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing in Clearwater and St. Petersburg for 31 years now. And with me is one of our attorneys, Ahmed Yaksin, who is also going to be very actively involved with this case. Together, we represent the Todashev family, along with the attorneys at CARE and with attorney Barry Cohen and his law firm. We're going to be representing him during the criminal investigation and during any civil action that may follow. Mr. Cohen could not be here today because we were all retained rather soon prior to this press conference, but if you would like any comments from him, you can feel free to contact his office, and I'm sure he'd be happy to speak with you. Mr. Cohen and I agreed to represent the Todashev family because we believe the people in this country, regardless of their religion, their race, their ethnicity, and their immigrant status, deserve to be treated fairly by our government and law enforcement. We believe that Mr. Todashev, as any father would, deserves a thorough explanation about what happened to his son when he was alone in his house with state and federal law enforcement officers and then killed. I reached out to Barry Cohen and asked him to join me as co-counsel on this case as part of our legal team because of his long history of standing up to governmental officials who do not share our belief in fundamental fairness, justice, and basic human rights. And I know that he is not afraid to battle anyone on behalf of the Todashev family, and neither am I. Mr. Cohen, myself, and the attorneys at CARE are absolutely thrilled to know that State Attorney Ashton is leading a criminal investigation into the events that led to our client's son's killing. We have every reason to feel confident that it will be aggressive, thorough, and a complete investigation, and will uncover the truth of what happened. We believe that if the facts show improper conduct, Mr. Ashton will hold the law enforcement officers accountable. Our legal team will cooperate with the state attorney, and we look forward to an opportunity for our client to meet with Mr. Ashton and tell him about this young man who was killed in his home. We intend to demonstrate to Mr. Todashev and his family that in this great country there can be justice. Now, I'd like to introduce, this is Mr. Todashev sitting next to me. And we have some photographs we'd like to share with you that I'd like to explain. And if you'd like to get pictures of the photographs after the press conference, you're welcome to do that. After that, Mr. Todashev is going to give a statement. He has a very difficult time expressing his opinions because he is in mourning and he's just very distraught about the loss of his son, and he's asked me if he could refrain from answering questions after his statement. So he's going to make a statement, and then he's not going to answer any questions after that. I have
Hold on.
Sure.
I was told my microphone was too high. Is that okay? Yes. Sorry, guys.
One moment. What I have are photographs of Ibragim Todashev both from his youth and also from more recent years. Mr. Todashev will tell you that his son was a loving young man a caring young man, a peaceful young man, but I'll put these in front of me. And was totally shocked about the circumstances surrounding his death. And here are more recent photographs that I'll share with you. Just prior to this incident, Ibragim Todashev had serious knee surgery. I have some photographs which I can share with you later of the scarring of his knee. We also have some photographs that were taken of the funeral, and I'll share those with you at the conclusion of the press conference. Mr. Todashev?
Я хочу рассказать немного о своем сыне.
I would like to say a little bit about my son.
Какой он был. Про сына уже много про меня рассказали, поэтому я просто о сыне расскажу с детства, какой он был и вообще какой он мальчик был. Был очень талантливый.
Many things were said about me already, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about my son from his very childhood and on.
Был энергичный, талантливый, добродушный.
My son was very energetic, and he was a talented and very kind person.
Любил друзей, старался всем помочь.
He loved his friends, and he tried to help everybody who could.
Был всегда душой и лидером компании среди своих друзей.
He was always the heart and soul of the company of his friends.
Друзья любили и уважали его.
His friends really loved him and respected him.
Он был ответственный и обязательный.
He was very responsible and conscientious.
Мой сын был очень хорошим мальчиком.
My son was a very good boy.
Хорошим внуком для дедушки и бабушки.
He was a good grandson for his grandparents.
Хорошим братом.
He was a good brother.
Хорошим соседом.
He was a good neighbor.
Хорошим родственником.
He was a good family member.
Мы его все любили,
We loved him all very much,
как и он нас.
and he loved us back.
Он был очень общительным.
He was very sociable.
Он очень любил спорт,
He loved the sports very much,
уважал старших,
and he respected the elderly.
любил своих братьев и
He
сестер,
loved his brothers and sisters.
но собрался ехать домой. Он получил грин-карту.
So he decided to go home after he had received a green card.
Купил подарки всем близким, родственникам и друзьям.
He had bought the presents for all of his family members and friends.
Купил билет на 24 мая
He had bought a ticket for the 24th of May
2013 года.
of 2013.
Но с 21 на 22 мая ночью его жизнь оборвалась.
But at night of the 21st to the 22nd, his life was cut short.
Он ничего плохого не сделал.
He didn't do anything wrong.
Он не способен на это.
He was simply not capable of doing it.
Он был очень хорошим мальчиком.
He was a very good boy,
Он хотел жить.
and he wanted to live.
Я приехал в Америку, полагаясь на американское правосудие,
I came to America to rely on American legal system,
что добьюсь справедливости.
that I will be able to pursue and achieve the justice for my son.
Я благодарен Совету американо-исламских отношений,
I'm very thankful to the Council on American Islamic Relations
что они помогли мне найти одних из лучших адвокатов,
that they had helped me to find one of the best law firms,
в лице Берри Коуэна и
The law-
Эрика Людина.
the law firms of Barry Cohen as well as Eric Ludin.
Я уверен, что справедливость восторжествует.
And I'm certain that we will be able to achieve justice.
Я молюсь, чтобы ни одна мать и ни один отец не испытали в жизни то, что испытываю я и мать Ибрагима.
I hope and pray that no mother and no father will ever have to endure and go through what I'm going through right now.
Мой сын очень хорошим мальчиком был. Он невиновен. Его просто убили.
My son was a very good boy and he is innocent and he was simply killed.
Спасибо.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abdul-Baqi, for your really bravery and courage in standing up for the justice for your son, but not just for your son, for all Americans and all people who believe in the rule of law. As I mentioned, we're very excited to have Mr. Eric Luden and Barry Cohen join us as co-counsel on this case. Mr. Cohen really has a high sense of justice and is not scared to take on the system and hold the highest authorities to the rule of law. We are thrilled that U.S. Attorney or State Attorney Ashton is doing a criminal investigation. We have full confidence it will be thorough and that law enforcement will be held accountable if appropriate. With that, we'd like to open it up for any question and answers relevant to what we discussed today. I want to invite Mr. Luna to join me on the podium to address any questions and answers.
Mr. Todashev gotten the news report?
No, Mr. Todashev has not gotten the medical examiner report. We immediately requested a copy of the medical examiner report because a lot of our findings depended on what was found in the medical examiner report. However, the FBI barred the medical examiner report, medical examiner's office from releasing that report, even to the family, and that was very upsetting. Now I think we tend to understand the reason it was barred is potentially because of the criminal investigations, and in fact it was barred because of the criminal investigation potentially into the officers involved, as we understand it.
Usually families get
We have a question as well. About
Yeah, just a minute, please.
I mean, can you shed some light on that? Usually family members are entitled to.
That's normally that is true, but in this case, because there's a criminal investigation and that the subjects of the criminal investigation could possibly be law enforcement officers, we've not yet been, that's the explanation that's been given, and we have not yet received them.
Yeah. One second, let's take one from the conference call. You had something?
Yes, hi, this is Maria Cicchetti with the Boston Globe. We have heard reports that Mr. Todashev was visited by the FBI and wanted to ask if that's true and if he's been questioned and what they asked and how he feels about that.
He was visited by the mental times, but he didn't speak to them.
Okay. Yes, the FBI did attempt to question Mr. Todashev, but he did not speak to them because he didn't have any attorneys present at the time.
And I think if anything, what happened unfortunately with his son taught a very important reminder for all of us that you should never meet with law enforcement without an attorney present. That is our constitutional right as Americans. That's what makes America so great, and it's our duty to protect those freedoms and liberties that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights for all people.
Mr. Lynn, I just want to make sure, there's been some talk that there may be a wrongful death suit filed against the FBI. That has not happened at this point, but you're reserving that down the road, is that?
That's exactly right. We're going to let the criminal investigation play itself out. We want to find out what the results of the criminal investigation are. A civil action may be appropriate at that time.
You had a question, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to to elaborate on that. Besides wrongful death, are there any other avenues on the civil side that you all could pursue? Or is that
that's to be determined. We've left all options open. We want to wait and see what the criminal investigation reflects.
How do you know that he's been shot, that he was shot 7 times?
Can you do another rundown of the names? It was hard to hear each of the names of the speakers.
We will do that at the end. Sorry, you were asking a question?
How do you know that he was shot 7 times?
Right.
Is there any?
Well, we have his friends and family. They washed his body. They prepared it for the burial, and we have the photographs of his body where there's about over a dozen bullet wounds and injuries on the body. But again, we can't confirm the exact nature of all those injuries until we have the medical exam report. That's why we're not releasing our preliminary investigation as of yet.
There's been some reports that he was armed, but you're saying that absolutely is not the case, was not the case, correct?
Our sources have said that he was unarmed during the incident.
But our preference is not to comment on what happened in that house, but to allow the criminal investigation to be completed. But based on everything that we've learned, we have absolutely no reason to think there was any kind of a deadly weapon in the possession of our client's son.
We've heard knives, sword.
That's
Is there
right.
anything like that? I mean, I guess you don't know.
I've heard that from you, from the media, but I have no reason, in fact, to believe that that's true.
Have you been to his home since?
So we
has
ha-
evidence been collected?
Right.
So you might not have seen it? You know, I'm just trying
We've
to...
hired private investigators to go through the scene. You know, at best, what was available in his home at that time was a decorative, non-sharp sword that they actually hold with the blade once to open a door that was stuck. So that's the most, and that was distant in the room. And our position is, look.
But I mean, they would have collected evidence. If there were something that they say he grabbed, it wouldn't be there when you went to
Right, right.
So you don't know. Truth be told, you don't know.
Well, I mean, I think what's clear is that our sources within the Department of Justice and the FBI have said that it appears he was unarmed when this whole thing happened. And remember, the onus is on the FBI. If they're questioning somebody who they believe is dangerous, which we have no reason to believe he was dangerous, but if they're questioning somebody in his home, I think it's the onus is on them to make sure the area is secure. And if they didn't, then they didn't do a professional job, and policies need to be changed, people need to be reprimanded.
What do you think happened in that room?
Our investigation, by the way, just to follow up what we're saying, our investigation seems to indicate that there was no deadly weapon that was in my client's possession, my client's son's possession. There's a reason why Mr. Ashton is doing a criminal investigation. And we have theories of what happened, but it would be inappropriate for us to theorize about what happened. And that could interfere in some way with Mr. Ashton's investigation. We want to be as cooperative with him as possible. And so we aren't going to comment on what we think happened in that room, except that we think it was not a justified killing.
You said sources indicate that there wasn't a weapon in the home. What are those sources? I mean, is that a reliable one?
I'd rather not.
Friends say?
No. We're not talking about friends. We're talking about sources involved in the investigation.
What do you know about why Mr. Todashev's son was being investigated by the FBI to begin with?
I mean, as far as we know, they used to go to the same gym that the suspects in Boston used to attend. And the FBI really had a pattern that afterwards they went to pretty much everyone who had any degree of relationship or knowledge of the Boston suspects, and they went to question them all.
I think it's important to mention, because it's reflected in the photographs, that one of the individuals involved in the Boston bombing was involved in these fighting.
Gym. It was a gym.
You know, some kind of competitive fighting. There's a gym where people train for that. And my client's son also trained at that gym for a period of time. So they were an acquaintance. I think that the FBI, in its effort to do a complete investigation of what happened in Boston, made it a point to speak to anybody who was an acquaintance of the bombing suspects. But other than being an acquaintance, we know of no other reason why they were speaking with our client's son.
There was mention that he might have been a suspect in a triple murder.
Yeah, we've heard that rumor as well.
Well, but that's another reason.
That had never been mentioned to him or his friends who were with him during the questioning before that. So the first that came out was after the shooting, after he was killed.
So
We have no...
His friend says he was never questioned about it, but he knows whether Ibragim was questioned about it?
That, as far as Ibrahim told him throughout the process, they had never mentioned anything besides his knowledge of the Boston suspects.
You should know, I want to make this point clear as well. The FBI reached out to Mr. Todashev's son and spoke to him and asked to speak to him again. Mr. Todashev's son already had a plane ticket to leave the United States and go back to Russia to visit with his family. He was assured by the FBI that this would be the last time that they wanted to speak to him, and he delayed his trip home to meet with the FBI because of, apparently, an effort to want to be cooperative. And he didn't survive that second questioning.
Some of the friends immediately after he was killed said that there was almost a harassment by law enforcement. What have you found out about that? Was he being harassed by either the FBI or other law enforcement?
There's a great deal of pressure by the FBI to collect information, and I'd prefer not to comment on the type of harassment that may have gone on, because I don't want to detract from the reason why we're here today, which is to support Mr. Ashton in his criminal investigation so that we hope that the criminal investigation will be thorough and aggressive and complete, and that law enforcement officers will be held accountable if it's appropriate, and to announce that we have a legal team today that's set up to assist with the criminal investigation and pursue all civil avenues if they are appropriate.
Do you know how many times he had met with the FBI? Was it just twice?
It was multiple times.
You know?
No, I don't have the specifics at this time. Again, a lot of the facts that we want to confirm, and we don't want to be throwing out speculation, we cannot confirm until the FBI's investigation, the criminal investigation is complete, because they have a lot of the records and data that, frankly, we public records requested we have not had access to. We don't want to speculate here today.
With all due respect, I would venture to say about the nation, there's not a lot of sympathy for the victim. Your response?
Well, I think we've got an overwhelming amount of support, especially from the Boston community and the public at large, saying, hey, we don't want to live in a country where our federal officers can just kill somebody in their own home without coming out on the record and explaining why that happened. It's been months since an individual was killed, and this is the first time, normally every single time when somebody's killed by the FBI, within 24 hours, the FBI comes on the record and explains their justification for taking the life of another human being. Here it's been months and we don't know why this individual was shot and killed. So it's not just about the family and the individual, but it's about the due process of law, and that there's transparency in our government, and that the rule of law is protected and honored. So I think as Americans we all cherish and value the rule of law, and it's something we hold very dear.
Well, they did say, though, early on, that he attacked an agent was hurt with non-life-threatening injuries. We know that he's a great fighter. His father admits that he was good at taking pictures.
Yeah.
So if you hear something eventually that says he attacked them and he's an MMA fighter and really good at it,
Okay.
and he attacked an agent, what then would your response be?
I'd like to comment on this. As far as sympathy is concerned, my client's son may have been an acquaintance with a person involved with an evil act, but merely being an acquaintance, merely being a Muslim, merely being from a Russian province, does not mean that he isn't deserving of proper treatment by law enforcement officers. Now, weeks prior to this incident, my client, who you say was a trained fighter in a room with several law enforcement officers without a weapon, had knee surgery. And I'd like to just show you a photograph of the knee that made him to be a disabled fighter that evening, if he was a fighter at all. I also want to share with you photographs here of the funeral back in his hometown. And the father came in, collected his belongings, and these are the photographs that the father took of his apartment.
Do you know when that photograph was taken of his knee? How old is that?
Do you know when the photograph of his knee was taken?
После операции я точно день не могу сказать, но недели-две.
I couldn't tell the date precisely, but approximately 2 weeks after the surgery.
Well,
When was the surgery?
Две недели как повязку сняли, и сразу.
It was, he says, after the bandages were taken off, that's when the picture was
But
taken.
what-
Okay, but when was the surgery in relation to his death?
Знаете, когда операция произошла?
Знаю, у меня есть документы, что история болезни, я взял в больнице, у меня справки есть.
I do have some medical records, but he has to refer to them.
We'll have to get that information for you later. I don't have a precise date. But it's my understanding, it's important. He was recovering from his knee surgery at the time of this
and I
incident.
believe that's in our notes. We can probably get it for you after the conference as well. But it was relatively recent. He was still limping. He was still having a difficult time walking at the time when he was being interviewed by the agents.
But we firmly believe that this is the type of information that Mr. Ashton will investigate. He, I believe, may want to speak to Mr. Todashev, and we'll make him available for Mr. Ashton.
And speaking within our context within the Department of Justice, I mean, what they made very clear is that there is no reason Mr. Todashev should have been killed. So something, you know, at best case, the FBI did a terrible job, an incompetent job in how they handled that evening. And it's
Who's telling you? Who's just a word there? Who's saying it?
We're-
I mean, don't give me a
right.
name.
Yeah.
Context within the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Are these whistleblowers, or are they people that just don't?
There, I think a lot of people involved in this case, even from the federal side, are very upset about what happened. Because it's never good when somebody who's being questioned by law enforcement officers ends up dead in his own home. And a lot of people are very frustrated. So there's a lot of, I think, sympathy even within the Bureau, even within the Department of Justice and the State Attorney's Office regarding what happened. And that's why the Department of Justice is conducting its own criminal independent investigation. And that's why the State Attorney's Office is also conducting a criminal investigation.
And we really believe that in most cases where there's a shooting such as this, there is a perfunctory investigation, and 999 out of 1,000 times the law enforcement officers are cleared. We really have reason to believe that in this instance, the results of the investigation will not be swept under the rug, and the law enforcement officers will be held accountable. I think it's, I know you would like us to try to explain what we believe happened in that house, but we're not going to do that today.
You have a question, sir?
Can you tell me who Ashton is, when they made the decision to investigate, and why you think that they made the decision to investigate after the apparent refusal of other agencies?
Mr. Ashton is the state attorney for Orange and Osceola counties. And he's the head prosecutor. And since a killing occurred in his district, he's made a decision to investigate. It's my understanding that he's intending to do a very aggressive and thorough investigation and hold people accountable.
When did he decide to do this?
He just announced that last week.
Yeah, I think, I mean, they have been looking into it for quite some time. They announced it publicly last week. Sir, you had a question?
Well, you kind of sideswept this question earlier. There are early reports that Todashev implicated himself in that triple homicide in Massachusetts. What say you to that?
Yeah, we have absolutely no reason to believe that. We saw something like that. We read something like that in the media. And I have absolutely no reason to think that he was involved in any kind of homicide.
Yeah. And nonetheless, we have a judicial system, we have the courts. There's no reason he should have ended up dead.
A lot of times when officers use deadly force, their reason will be, I felt my life was in danger, or someone else's life was in danger. And it's hard to second guess somebody unless you're in their shoes, which is, I think, the reason a lot of times there is no action after, because how can you question how they felt? But that being said, there were several officers in the home with him. Do you think that that factors into your questions about what happened? In other words, if there are, I don't know how many officers were in the house, but more than one officer who's armed is in the house with him. Can you talk about that?
The answer is yes.
And we hired a homicide detective to examine the scene, and one of the things that we've confirmed is that only one officer, it was the FBI agent who shot all the bullets. And what the homicide detective's opinion was, because he worked for law enforcement for over 20 years, he said if there's a justifiable shooting, typically all the officers will draw their weapons. In this case, only weapon.
But we don't, no, please, let me just comment on what Mr. Sibley said. The state attorney's investigation may show something different. We're not going to comment on what happened in that house.
Right.
We don't know, and we'd like Mr. Ashton to make that decision.
Hearing that, I mean, where did that come from?
No, we hired our own investigators who have their own opinions,
right.
And we'll
but
share
again,
those
these are
with
all opinions. They cannot be confirmed.
Every bullet is coming from the same angle? Is that
These, again, you will see when it comes out in the investigation. Again, the point is we are thanking the state attorney's office for doing their own investigation. We support that investigation. We will cooperate with this investigation, but we believe it's not healthy to speculate as much. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think we've told you all everything we can tell you today.
I'm just curious, if this investigation does not go the way that I'm guessing you're hoping it does, will you still move forward with a civil suit anyway?
No, what I'm hoping for is that we find out the truth, because Mr. Todashev deserves to know what happened to his son. And that's all we're hoping for. We'll let the chips fall where they may, and then we'll make a decision about a civil action once we get the results of the investigation.
Have you been in contact with Mr. Ashton? What kind of help did you provide him?
We're reaching out to his office, and we are looking to hopefully arrange a meeting with him and Mr. Todashev. We're also looking to arrange a meeting with him and the U.S. Attorney's Office as well. I know there's some interest on both sides to have that happen.
Okay. Do you have anything scheduled yet?
Not as of yet.
All right.
Can you give me an idea of just an estimate of time on what is a reasonable amount of time for this investigation where you feel like they will do a thorough job, but then also get a response?
I would please ask you to contact Mr. Ashton's office, because we would like to know the answer to that as well. Mr. Todashev can't stay in the United States forever. We would like this to move along rapidly. So please feel free to direct that to Mr.
Define
Ashton.
rapid.
I think a lot of the questions are going in the realm of speculation. We really don't want to speculate. Again, we want to thank the State Attorney's Office for their investigation. What's clear at the end of the day is what this investigation will reveal how such occurrences could be avoided in the future. So it's very clear that Mr. Todashev should not have ended up dead. What could the FBI do to avoid such things being repeated? And if there was any violations, that those violations be prosecuted. Thank you so much.
Does anybody need
Non-speculative question. You're
non-speculative.
saying the last name differently. Can you agree on?
Yeah,
how
let's
it's
spell the
pronounced?
names. Todashev?
Todashev.
Well, if I mispronounce the name, it's my own fault.
Give him the mic,
That's how
please.
he has pronounced it.
Okay.
Todashev.
How long will Mr. Todashev be here? And
He was planning to leave this week. We've asked him to extend his visit
for how long?
until at least we have a meeting with Mr. Ashton.
Playing devil's advocate here.
No. Let's do this after. We need to spell some names and
But I mean,
so.
in a shooting situation,
Yeah.
come up with some possibilities where it would happen out of
Don't
the
do that.
blue.
We-
In other words, he's not cooperating, I'm gonna shoot him and kill him.
No,
We're not going to
we
speculate.
can't speculate.
Again, I think we need to have patience. I think the media needs to have patience. I think we're trying not to feed into the myths. Remember, since day one, there's been contradictory statements from the FBI. We're trying to make sure that everything is straightforward. So we're going to wait till the investigation is cleared from the State Attorney's Office.